Morning, Ralph.
Morning, Sam.
All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Morning Sam, Morning Ralph podcast. I am Paul Molinari with Popcorn GTM. I'm joined with my co-host, Chad Horn.
Hey everybody. Hey, Paul.
All right, bud. We've got a really cool show today. This is going to be a little different, but the best part about this show is that it really hits home for those restaurant technology startups. The topic is Scrappy marketing tactics for restaurant tech startups. Now, we said scrappy, not crappy. Very important distinction.
On this episode, we are excited to welcome restaurant tech industry veteran Kevin Jaskolka of Checkmate. He's the SVP of Marketing there. And Checkmate is a leading provider of online ordering solutions for busy restaurants. Kevin's going to share his insights on how young restaurant tech startups, like those that we work with, can employ scrappy marketing tactics to attract restaurants to engage and demo their solutions.
Now, you said scrappy, not crappy, right?
I did use the S, yes,
okay,
scrappy.
Good.
Yeah.
We're going to be checking ourselves often during, I think, this episode. Before we get Kevin to introduce himself, let me give Kevin his flowers. Kevin, KJ, is a seasoned marketing and sales leader with over 25 years experience in startups and established companies specializing in B2B, SaaS, fintech, high-tech sectors. He's an expert in brand transformation, lead generation, product marketing, and go-to-market strategy. Before KJ joined Checkmate, he held executive roles at Select Funding and Partech, and also worked at companies like Seneca Data, and Nomadics, Intel. And the coolest thing is not only is he a U.S. Army vet, thank you for your service, KJ, and he's also a freaking scuba diver. The man is a machine.
Scuba Pro.
So, welcome aboard, man. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Kevin, thanks for being on the program. And I can't think of a better way to start than asking you this, right? We're talking about Scrappy. What is Checkmate's Scrappy origin story? Tell us about how this thing got going.
It is about as scrappy as you can get. So it started with our founder, CEO, Vishal Agrawal, with a great idea that, hey, restaurant checks, it would be great if we could split them between people. And he went out there and, being the entrepreneur he is, went through Manhattan and looked for people to buy it. Seemed like a great idea.
Reasonable.
Not too many people were interested. And at one point in time, he got to a restaurant and he said, that's not my problem splitting checks. My problem was all these darn printers and tablets at my reception stand and in my back of house that are sending me delivery orders. That's the problem. If you can find a way to inject those delivery orders into my point of sale, I'll pay you. And that's the beauty of SaaS. Take a problem, create code around it, find a solution. If it works, they give you money. And if it really works, they give you more money. So that's how we got started. And we went through the life cycle from there. Product worked, didn't work, refine it, build it. And it was Vishal and our co-founder Luke trying to get this thing up off the ground to be the third-party injection into POS from delivery service providers.
Yeah. What was the big break?
Yeah, literally got our first customer in an elevator. Vishal bumped into the CIO of Five Guys, and he looked at his shirt, looked at Vishal and said, Checkmate, that's a Checkmate. What do you guys do? And explained what he does. He goes, we need that. And that was our first customer. So elevator pitches, dear founders, do absolutely work.
That's awesome. Right. So you hit something earlier there, Kevin, which was like solve a real problem for the customer, right? Don't just have an idea of what you think they need. You hear it from them. You heard it a couple times in that journey, just what you shared. But after you've locked in on that, right, you even have Five Guys at this point, right? How do you tell the broader world what you do? How do you even get that message out there?
And that's it, right? So, obviously the first customer success is vital. And kind of that 0 to $1 million
This
revenue,
is the proving grounds, right?
You're proving. You're trying to get somebody to give you that break, and we got that break. From there, it's word of mouth, it's partnerships, and at least when I was at PAR, working on the Brink POS side, partnerships ecosystem was really important, and Checkmate was reference sold a lot.
Yeah.
Partnerships ecosystem matters, and interconnectability between other software is important. So, hey, build those network relationships. It's a lot better than outbound selling or even inbound leads, right? So having a good network around you is vital. After that, getting the referrals from your customers is vital. But that entire time from 0 to 1 million, 0 to 3 million, it's all about founder-led sales, working the heck out of LinkedIn and your network, making friends along the way who will reference sell you and co-sell you, getting that product down to a really good fit and market adaptability, working out the use cases and getting the references off it.
You know, one of the things, I just want to share a quick story about my experience with Kevin, really kind of as from afar. You know, when I worked for a restaurant startup, now albeit it was an older startup that seemed to kind of needed to be redirected or needed to be in some ways resurrected. I met Kevin at a trade show and learned that he was a VP of marketing at PAR for their entire hospitality business. And after I met him, I was impressed, and I needed sort of a benchmark as a marketer. I needed to look to a company as almost like a role model. And, you know, one of the things I think you could advise to any startup is find that company that you're really impressed with and try to emulate them. And if they're doing something, don't be afraid to copy it. Put your own spin on it, of course. But, right? So it's like you're a startup, but you got to be strategic about it too. Sometimes the best thing you can do is copy.
Yeah, it's true. Like you said, you want to keep the originality, but in a lot of ways, there's not too much new under the sun often as well, right? There's a lot of repackaging, let's be honest about it. And you're smart to figure out who your category leader is, who your aspirational peer group is, and how do you want to look and feel and differentiate yourself from them. Every competitive sales cycle comes down to how are you the same, but how are you different? I want to make sure I'm not losing anything, but I want to make sure I'm picking up something new. So, yeah, great point.
Kevin, you started to share some best practices, I would say, right, for innovative early stage tech companies. How do they get scrappy with marketing? But these companies are out there and they're trying to figure this out. What are going to be the challenges they face in doing the stuff you just said? Like, what would you expect companies to like think about? Like, hey, well, this is what I got to figure out to get there.
You got to pivot, right? And what you might need for a minute isn't going to really meet the playbook necessarily. But what I mean by that is, like I said, between 1 to 3 million, you're just trying to build momentum. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing anything in marketing, it's going to be around demand gen. So first couple sales, you're on your own. 2 to 3 million, you probably get permission to kind of hire that first demand gen person. And it really should be in demand gen, not any other function of marketing. And that ideal marketing person probably has experience carrying a bag, meaning that they had a quota and they've actually sold in the past. So that first marketing person, their only goal is to bring you cost-effective leads to get from 3 to 5, and probably around 3 million is when you're looking for them. And really, since you can't do everything in marketing with just one person, not a bad idea to engage with a fractional agency like what you guys are doing, multidisciplinary, able to hit a couple different areas, working for that demand gen person. But that demand gen person, it's got to be demand gen.
It's got to be demand gen.
Yeah.
Demand gen.
Let's stick on that for a second, because I think there's a couple of misconceptions out there about marketing and what's more important, demand generation versus lead generation, right? It's kind of like two sides of the same coin. You can look at demand generation as creating hype and awareness, resonance, let's say, right? When I say resonance, I mean a connection with people from a brand perspective. Lead generation is in some ways more tactical, right? There are campaigns, there's a message behind it, there are mechanics, right? There are the machinations that create leads, bring it in through a process. So when you talked about bringing on that first person, as the head of marketing at a startup, I think your first job is really brand, right? It's setting up the brand, setting up the message, the flavor, the resonance, and then that next hire, because once you set that up and you tell the story and you project what your value proposition is, that next hire, that critical hire, really should be a little bit more operational.
I think you're right. A lot of that brand message and that DNA is still all coming out of the founder, right?
Yeah.
So that it's really that person is the person you've got to mind for what that is, and then what you're doing at that point is taking it out of their brain and starting to compartmentalize it, operationalize it, because eventually that's going to be what you build your key message document, your collateral stack, your sales enablement, your sales talk tracks, and the more formalized process that tends to come after 3 million. But really it's still heavy founder-led sales. Any interest you're getting is most likely going to that guy or that gal who owns the company, and they're doing the functional sales. So you're really looking to pull that in, and at this level, academically, demand gen, lead generation are different. But for this conversation at that level, it's the next extension. Hey, if they're not excited and they're talking to you,
Right.
you're not going to get a deal. So they kind of go through that excitement conversation, demo with the founder.
So let's assume for a second that you've got the brand story down, right? You understand what your value prop is, and you know. So let's get scrappy with it, right? So what are we doing? How do these restaurant tech startups? What are some of the things they can do just to start moving the chains for leads?
Yeah, LinkedIn's day one, probably your best source of data. The next source of free data is going to be the trades, right? The Technomic top 500 or whatever the hot one is, the fast casual top 25, your top 50. That's where you're going to find all your companies. Then you use LinkedIn to get the information. And then you start trying to figure out, how do I get to a decent CRM and marketing automation platform? And the gold standard is HubSpot.
Yeah.
Not that Salesforce isn't a great platform, but if it's one you want to turn on, be up and running without an admin in under a month, you're going to go to HubSpot. And the beauty is HubSpot's got some really nice programs for VC-funded companies that make it. It's not a $25,000 a year lift coming out of the gate. It's pretty economical to get on that platform and get going.
Yeah, Chad, that's something that we highly recommend to our clients too. We're a HubSpot shop ourselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Something I want to hit on because of our clients and just because of where we are in kind of like technology landscape right now and it relates to Checkmate, because once upon a time, Checkmate wasn't just a new tech company. It was a new category, right? What was since now called aggregators, third-party integration, whatever that ultimately got labeled. That did not exist, and then it did. So Checkmate had the challenge of not just even got known as a company, but making people aware of the category. Could you talk about how you might tailor or recommend, differences between companies that are not just getting known as another player in an existing category, but charting a new path and a new thing people aren't even familiar with?
Yeah, there's a lot in there, right? There's either companies that figure it out and get it right or don't.
Yeah.
And that's the whole bet, right? In our case, the first thought was wrong, and then it came with a quick pivot. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to know what you're doing. You got to chase the dream, be hard with it, but be flexible enough to hear what the market's asking for. And again, it goes back to, hey, SaaS, listen for the problem, ask the right questions, and build accordingly.
This is product. This is product market fit, like literally defined, right?
Right.
So, what your founder was smart enough to, and brilliant guy, regardless, but smart enough to recognize the opportunity that was in front of him when that original challenge came in front of him, right? And he was understood, there's probably a product market fit here that I can, like you said, SaaS is great because you discover what the problem is and then you code around it for the fix.
Yeah. And really at that moment, there was a minimally viable fit, right? That turned into a minimally viable product that then turned into an ideal product with an ideal customer profile and then expanded out from there. But yeah, from around 2016 when we were founded all the way up through probably 2022, it was the COVID pivot, and a little bit after, everybody was moving onto an integration, right?
Right.
Anybody who isn't integrated, when was the last time you saw a lot of delivery tablets anywhere?
Right.
Maybe, But by 2020, all of that demand had been satisfied. Everybody's on a solution now. Everybody's picked a dance partner.
Right. And in your case and in your category, it's kind of like, you love that analogy, the dance partner. Kevin, let me shift a little bit. I want to get towards lead generation and budgets. Okay. So our audience is predominantly restaurant tech companies. Okay. They are all in it for the same thing. They want to work with larger restaurant brands, or maybe they want to work with grassroots segment brands, but they all want to get their solutions inside of restaurants. To do that, certainly they can get Scrappy on LinkedIn and make the connections. But what would you say are kind of the core things that they need to do? Do they need to go to trade shows? Do they need to spend money on search? Do they need to do display advertising? What should they do?
And that's it, right? So after I'd say you've kind of exhausted that initial network, and you've exhausted the kind of the outbound effort on LinkedIn and other sources, then you start, at that point you need to start looking outside yourself, and where do you go? Trade shows are a natural direction to go, but you got to be careful, right? Because you can go crazy in trade shows. Come in with a 20 by 20 booth and a $50,000 set of booth assets, and spend an extra 20 grand on the speaking spot. You get 50, 70 people, and you're looking at $100,000 spend, big dinner, and it's like, oh boy, what did I just do, right? So your next layer up is going to shows, working the shows, and starting to evaluate them. There's a lot of work that can be done. Great place for meetings, economical on the travel and expense side, and kind of get your feet wet and start figuring out if it makes sense. Beyond that, working with the trade pubs is probably the next smart way to go, right? So would you want to spend 10 to 20K minimum maybe to grab a speaking spot at one of these places? And again, you're probably 5 minutes on a panel doing something else. Not to say that they're not great opportunities, but compare and contrast that to a webinar you might do with a trade pub, QSR Magazine, fastcasual.com, Food on Demand. Maybe now your spends 6 to 8. They help market it to their audience. They help on the demand gen side. People show up for it, probably the same number. You have an asset you can use.
Right.
You didn't have to travel and do everything else around a trade show, because that's about 4, 6, 8 weeks worth of logistics even to get the booths set up.
You want to crush a marketer's soul? Just keep talking about trade shows.
Right, exactly. So again, in that $1 million range, it's just the founder working it hard. 3 to 5, you start getting that first demand gen person in. You're still doing that, but now you can start looking a little bit externally. I would experiment with pay-per-click, and if you can but there's no point doing that unless you have a way to capture something.
Agreed. I just want to piggyback on this idea of trade pubs. Trade pubs can be your best friend if you work with them the right way. It's not just about the shows that they sponsor. Sometimes it's also some of the humdrum tactics that they might have available in their kit. There was something that used to be really effective, and I think it still might be, called native content. What is native content? Native content means that you, restaurant technology company, create a thought leadership article, a blog post, let's say. But it goes deeper, it's well thought out, it's researched, it's smart, it's intelligent, and it's pay to play. Let's call a spade a spade. You are paying Trade Pub to put your content on their website. Number one, you are now published in that Trade Pub. Number two, you have essentially licensed to use that as a reprint. You have backlinks back to your website that's helping with SEO. And generally speaking, with any sort of native content, you also have, usually what's included in that package is an email component as well. So the content goes on the site, it gets into their email feed, they put it on their socials. It's a very nice packaged play that's not crazy money, that kind of you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that goes back to one of your points about how do you start building the brand. Right. And really that initial person plus a fractional agency, that's an easy combination to hit. And like I said, it's all pretty much, you can find those opportunities in the media kits for all those trade pubs.
Right.
And just a couple conversations to find the right person to help you out. But kind of the beauty of digital is here, you can make small bets, test, A/B test, see if it works. Am I getting 2-to-1 LTV to CAC? Am I getting a 3-to-1, 5-to-1 LTV to CAC? And if you are, and it's repeatable, well, double down on it. If I can get form fills and my cost of a form fill and my cost to turn those form fills into a customer that's paying me, if I can achieve a 3-to-1 ratio there or a 5-to-1, double down, right? Because then you're just kind of printing money, but you can keep it under tight financial control.
Makes sense. So a couple things I want to ask about. But while we're on this topic, because we talked about trade shows and trade pubs, I want to ask about trade shows because I know a lot of our audience kind of is kind of tortured around like, what do I need to do with shows? Because they feel like if I'm not there, I'm not relevant. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a lot of perspectives on this. One extreme would be like, well, we need to be there. We need to be at all the major shows so that we're visible and people know like to take us seriously.
Right.
And it's less about, do I get any observable ROI from any one show? I just need to be there. Other extreme is like, no, if we do a show, we better darn well have very clear measured ROI coming out at the end of it. How would you advise a scrappy restaurant tech company to think about this?
At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answers. There's only trade-offs, right? Truthfully, how do you want to spend your seed capital?
Yeah.
How do you want to spend your time? You can be very effective at a show meeting everybody, talking to everybody, setting up meetings because everybody is there. Probably one of the more beneficial things you can do is go tie into the partners you need to help expand your network, right? So you can get a lot done, again, without the 10 by 10. And a lot of these shows have kind of the startup alley or, very simple, very cost-effective pods, not 10 by 10s, but, maybe they share a kind of a 6-foot area and there's somebody on the other side and it's a pedestal type thing and you can get presence at the show. There's often an award, who wins startup alley type thing. So there's other ways to get really scrappy and not go in crappy into those types of events, right?
Yeah.
And again, there's no wrong answers. It's trade-offs. If you walk out with a monster and your ideal customer, and you went in for a 10 by 10, you won.
Right.
Now, and I would say though, hey, we managed to go in for an event, just walking it, and close that deal in a 4 square foot elevator. So again, no right answers, no wrong answers. There's trade-offs and what you think is the right.
Talk about scrappy. There does feel like there's this, trade shows now are so expensive. Let's just stay on the trade show vibe for a minute. I mean, the reality is it's so expensive. And that's for lots of reasons, right? I mean, just the venues themselves are more expensive than they used to be. Mm-hmm. The food at the venues, the labor at the venue, all of these things, the costs have gone up. So the folks putting on the show have to raise prices and all of that. But there is something to be said about walking, either walking the show or, lingering, I guess you can say. A good scrappy tactic might be to hang out outside the show doors. There's, there are different things that one can do. I mean, I can think of a tactic.
It's scrappy.
It's scrappy. One tactic that we did for a client was, we created a whole bunch of different postcards and business cards with very clever, interesting, and somewhat provocative or controversial, imagery, things that got people like looking at it and then recognizing it and then remembering it, and it didn't cost much except for a couple $100 in print costs and a plane ticket at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Scrappy.
Absolutely.
So let's tie this back to some numbers, right? So at the end of the day, what you're trying to do as a company is drive a really high lifetime value of the customer, and on the marketing side, really low cost of customer acquisition. How do you maximize that, right? Because even the channels can change the LTV. But ultimately, how do you think about maximizing that ratio to the benefit of the company?
That's a great point. So, let's say you're kind of approaching that $3 to $5 million range, right? Mm-hmm. You got the founder. The founder's still probably pretty involved in sales. You got the product team building, iterating, refining the product. You've got your ideal customer profile, at least version 1. You started formalizing a little bit of sales and marketing. You probably have at least one full-time marketing person, maybe the agency we talked about. You probably have around 3 to 5, probably one full-time account exec. Around 5, depending on what your ARR, MRR is, you probably got a good number of customers. You're starting to think, hey, I don't want to have to go back and refill this revenue hole. So I want to start thinking about making sure my customers are really happy and retaining them. So you're starting to think about revenue retention around 5, right? And past 5, you're probably going to start segmenting your sales team, SDR, sales development rep, AEs, account execs, and you're starting to look at some customer success, not just onboarding or customer support, but customer success, making sure you retain that revenue. And if you're a multi-product SaaS company, you're probably starting to think about cross-sell, upsell, right?
Right.
And in the case of selling to restaurants, one of the beauties about restaurants is even the biggest ones grow around 2% a year. And if you get some of those hot, fast casuals, they might add 5-10% in terms of location footprint a year. So you've got a constant ongoing, almost a dividend stream there as they add on and want to adopt a solution.
So you're talking about this kind of ecosystem of let's just call it a sales and marketing ecosystem, okay, where you have people out in the field, they're driving the deals. You have inbound leads that are coming in, all of which requires money to fuel. And so one of the wonderful formulas we have in marketing is this concept of LTV to CAC, right? Mm-hmm. Lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. And what's the ratio what's sort of the golden ratio there for customer lifetime value to customer acquisition cost? I mean, ultimately, there's a ratio that is good, that you can feel good about, and therefore you can justify the dollars you spend.
Kind of the best rule of thumb is 3 to 1. Now, there's a lot of opinions on that. 5 is obviously better than 3, and if you're at a 2 or a 2.5, do I quit or do I kind of go back in and see what's going on in the campaign? A resource I'd suggest is Bessemer Venture Partners, bvp.com.
Yeah. They've
got amazing research, benchmarks on how their top quartiles are doing versus the bottom versus the middle. And they spend a lot of time breaking down kind of benchmarks and thinking and where do you invest and what you should be looking at on a split between 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10. So there's a lot of really good data points in there, all kind of free research, really good thought leadership.
Awesome.
And then they even break down up to 100, right? Because after you kind of figure out the 1 to 20, then there's a lot of changes between 20 to 50 million, 50 million to 100, and then somewhere in there you're probably looking at IPO.
Listeners, I will put a link in the show description to, was it Bessemer?
Bessemer, bvp.com.
Yeah, to bvp.com. Thanks. Hey guys, let's take a break, regroup. There's a couple of things that we want to get into, and then we'll do everybody's favorite segment, Hate to Tell You But, right after this break. So, put your Dunkin' spiked on ice. We'll be right back. Hey guys, what's up? It's Paul Molinari of the Morning Sam, Morning Ralph podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Checkmate. Checkmate empowers enterprise restaurant brands with powerful ordering solutions and hands-on support. Their scalable technology enables restaurants to drive sales across channels, including custom websites, apps, kiosks, catering, third-party marketplaces, voice AI, and more. With seamless integrations, smart analytics, and 24/7 service, Checkmate helps brands conquer their digital goals. Restaurants can launch unique ordering experiences, centrally manage menus, recapture revenue, leverage customer data, and continually adapt with new integrations. It's all there. Regardless of how you want to grow, Checkmate has the tools and guidance to power, manage, and evolve your digital business. So check it out, fellas and ladies. Let's do this. Learn more at itsacheckmate.com today. Again, go to itsacheckmate.com today.
Welcome back to Morning Sam, Morning Ralph, and we're still here with Kevin Jaskolka of Checkmate. Kevin, something I wanted to ask you, I've been thinking about over this break more, is this idea of customer success and the circular nature of how that can pair with marketing. So one thing I see a lot of companies, early stage companies, get right and get wrong is this idea of the case study, right? You have your early customers, hopefully they're thrilled with the product, the service. How should that be used, right? How should that be viewed and used by marketing to further growth? I see it being powerful with others, but like, put some structure around that for us if you could.
It is. It is absolutely right. So there's a lot of ways to kind of break through this. So first, the micro. Hey, just getting somebody to say this solution's good. I mean, even at that trade show, if you have a customer, bump into somebody else who might be a prospect. Hey, hear it from John, hear it from Sally, hear it from Mark. They did an amazing job for us. You should adopt them too. You're already halfway home. No surprise, customer referrals. And one of the cheap programs you can run early on, refer a restaurant program. You get in there, you get the first customer to introduce you to somebody else. You would at least pay your cost of acquisition for that opportunity, and that's probably a 50, 60, 70% close rate.
Yeah.
Assuming it's a solid referral and not just I'm filling out the form. Partner referrals probably close 50, 60% of the time. If you link to a POS and that POS rep says, hey, you should talk to this software company because they're solid, you're already halfway there. Network selling really matters. So I'm going to speak for you now, specifically case studies. Yes, once you've got a good story there and you want to work the customer to do that, and hopefully you've done a good enough job to earn it. Another option is, hey, maybe you adjust your MRR for a year and write a contract into the case study or a press release and get that customer quote in there. The bigger customers, the big QSRs, they all talk. Every CIO talks to each other.
That's right. Right.
For all those QSRs that are over 2,000 locations, there's only 20 of those. All those CIOs know each other, right? And they all kind of compare notes. The other part is, at some point in time, that manager, that director, that CIO goes somewhere else. If you did a good job for them, odds are you're going to end up in their next piece, right? I've been to a lot of different companies. You got Salesforce, guess what's coming out? Guess what's going in? Again, nothing wrong with Salesforce, but HubSpot is my default CRM.
No doubt.
It's my default marketing engine. So
Amen.
You're going to take with you the people who made you successful and the products that made you successful as you change. So all of that is really important. All right, so now kind of the macro thinking, all right? So somewhere out there is still this whole idea of the technology diffusion curve and markets roll in basically a sine wave. You've got a group of people who they don't care. They're looking for the revolutionary fix. They're the early adopters. They don't care if it's broken, half works. They're willing to be messy and scrappy with you. Even if the current state of the product is crappy, they'll tell you how to fix it because then they get to define it the way they want it early on. They're the ones who are willing to suffer the slings and arrows to get it through the lab, to get it deployed, right? They're the ones who are going to deal with their franchises because it's an important catapult for them to go forward. Win them, get them talking, because it's those testimonials that are going to get you to the ones that are more mainstream, a little more pragmatic, a little harder, a little more reserved, don't want to take the chances, more looking for not the revolution, but the evolution of the tech stack.
Right.
If you did a good job there, you get to cross the chasm and you go fight for those bigger customers. They're going to want to see the success stories from them. And then on the back half of that curve is a late majority, and then finally the laggards who are still probably aren't on streaming video
The point
yet.
is that that's such a great story, Kevin. My goodness, because it's so true. The case study affords the opportunity to the company a proof point, right? This is when we talk about pillar proof points. One of the things that we like to do in our messaging exercises for our clients is we talk about pain points as they relate to the CMO, the CFO, the COO, the CEO, the CTO, right? What are the pain points for each of those? How does your company solve that pain point? What is the value of solving that pain point for that particular persona, and how does that value accrue across the organization? So when you do a case study, you have this amazing ability to speak directly to each one of those different personas in terms of how you are solving their pain. Right? So a well done case study should have those elements where it's not just, oh, we did this, this is the problem, this is the solution, and this is the result. No, this is an amazing opportunity to literally think about how you're solving that, how you are creating that solution for all of the different people, all of the different stakeholders in the organization. It's not just about the end result. The end result is great, but how does the CMO feel about it? How did it solve did you get more financial clarity for the CFO? You see, so I think case studies are great. They're often very hard to do because they take time and focus and discipline and permission. And certainly the higher up you go on the enterprise scale, the more complicated it gets because there could be, public companies and So take advantage when you have an opportunity with a client to do a case study. Don't rush through it. This is your biggest opportunity because you're going to get so much out of it. When we talk about Scrappy, imagine if you did a great case study and all of the content that comes out of that. I mean, that's worth its weight in gold.
And the other thing to think about with case studies, right, is there's internal value, and by internal value I mean to the brand itself that you probably they're now a customer, and the external value to get the plus one customer. Just because you won a deal doesn't necessarily mean that there's a mandate. You might only get a license to hunt, meaning that you are now an approved solution. Now you get to take your solution and get other franchisees, corporate stores versus non-corporate stores to adopt. So having that case study internally to the brand might be a really important artifact for you to even go get the rest of that 10, 15, 100,000 unit location business there.
Most definitely. All right, let's pivot to everyone's favorite part of the show. I hate to tell you, Kevin, but this is your opportunity to correct any weird misconceptions related to marketing strategies. I mean, everybody's a marketer, right? Everybody knows, how to do this. Come on, man. This is the fun stuff, right? What are
the hate to tell you is there's a couple ugly ones out there.
All right, what do you got?
Keep me up at night. So, as a SaaS company grows and they grow rapidly, you can't stand still. Hey, no kidding, that's obvious. Yeah, not really, because I've seen a lot of people hit the wall with it. Here's an example, just even on the founder side. You start with founder-led sales, right? Founder-led sales probably takes you generally up to $5 million. And generally you're starting to put in sales leadership, 5 to 10 million, you're transitioning out of that. Founder-led sales absolutely hits a plateau at 16 to 20 million. There's too much going on, right? And even Bessemer will show you. So they show these magic trajectories of growth. A lot of it's founder-led sales. And around 15 to 20, growth peaks off. It hits this plateau. Like, boom, zoom. And it comes down and it goes back up.
The weeds just get too high?
The weeds get too high, it gets too hard, the business you got to get it out of the CEO's head early and into the sales team's head and start formalizing that process. Your GTM process, your go-to-market process, has to have wind beneath the wings at that point. It's got to carry the business forward, right? It's really critical. There's a lot of companies stuck that never get past that because of that exact thing. And a lot of companies that break through, but you really got to watch it. It's an absolute true thing, and I've seen it, and we've punched through it, and I've seen it a couple times. The other thing there is the types of leadership and the types of things that need to get done. Even when we talk through, hey, 1 to 3 million, you're kind of doing this, 5 to 5 plus, right? 10 plus, you're starting to change. You got to change your focus as a marketing leader. Otherwise, you're going to be really surprised when it's like, oh, I'm no longer viable in my role because I missed too many points. You always have to be skating to where the puck's going to be. And that change happens almost every year. as a company. So you really got to look and see where you have to go next. You got to pivot off demand gen never goes away, lead gen never goes away, but at some point in time, people are going to be looking at the brand, what's your content, thought, leadership strategy. At some point in time, you got to figure out when you start migrating into PR. Right? It's not just one product you might be marketing. Your product marketing mix needs to change, your GTM needs to change, the sales demands all change. So you have to be nimble and always watching out and knowing not just where to steer the organization, but when, right? Because you might want to do the brand over, but if it's not time to do it, then it doesn't make sense to start pitching for that. You're just out of sync with the business. So it's a bit of a rubric you got to play for, and you can get wrapped around the idea that I need to hire all these specialists in functional areas. Again, until you've got a proven daily way to keep that person at capacity, 8 to 10 hours a day, 40 plus hours a week, you really should be thinking about having those non-core skills at a fractional agency. That's a lot of the ways I've been successful. I've never initially started a PR program without hiring it fractionally first until I got it to a critical mass, and then it was, okay, how do you do it? Do you keep the agency, run it in-house, or run kind of a hybrid model? Same thing with demand, not demand gen, but digital advertising. Until you're sure you're going to do it and you can source it daily, you probably don't want to hire it internally.
Yeah, I share that sentiment. I used to be of the belief that one of the first things that I would do from a spend perspective is go grab a PR, something. And usually I'd find a scrappy one. Let's be real about it. The 10K plus a month PR firms, I mean, there's a great way to burn. But I do think the PR function is immensely valuable, particularly if you can find one that goes beyond the that can go into tier 2 and tier 1 media.
Yes. Since you mentioned just 2 seconds on PR, the way to think about PR, if you're going to go down that path, is you can get good regional people. And by regional or people with a Rolodex, they're freelancers, they're in the space, the market you're in, they got good relationships. You're probably looking 1 to 3, $3 to $5 grand a month. Okay, that's a starting point. If you want a really good, deep national, you're probably looking somewhere 7 to 10. You should not be looking at the internationals that are charging 30, 50. If they have anything in Paris or Singapore, Hong Kong, they're not where you need to be right now. Yeah. Find the guy or the gal with the Rolodex who can get you that starting piece. And, don't go crazy on the wire spend. Do restaurantnews.com and get your releases out there really economically and go from there.
Awesome. Hey, Chad, anything else we should cover off before we start to wrap this bad boy up, looking at the time we're at now? This has been an amazing conversation, I have to say.
Well, I mean, I think just it's in the same vein. I was just maybe just like a minute on it, right? Is this social media influencer strategy a lot of companies have to look at. Any commentary there, Kevin, and then we'll wrap it up. But just that's a big thing.
B2B, I haven't played with it. I've been B2B pretty much my entire time, so I don't have a lot to add. I would say B2C, you really got to look at the gives and the gets there. Again, there's no right answers, there's no wrong answers. There's trade-offs. If you're going to go down that path, make sure you know what you're getting and why you're getting it.
On that, it's kind of it's a super weird space, particularly for restaurant tech. I mean, the reality is that you mentioned this wicked early in the conversation, was that LinkedIn is kind of your best friend. But I recently have been dipping my toe on behalf of the client in Modash. It's a tool, an online tool, that allows you to zero in and identify online influencers in any given category. So if you're into food and restaurants and this and that, you can zero in on Modash, find these influencers, and also find what their rates are. And it's like any other SaaS thing, free to try, this and that. But if you're interested out there, folks, I'll leave a link in the description. Modash, you can check out and see where influencers, social media and social media advertising. One thing that we didn't really touch on too much, but I think it's worthwhile, is talking about a DSP, right? A demand side platform to help with those advertising opportunities, right? You have a budget. You're a scrappy startup. You're starting to put together, saving up some money to do your first real campaigns. How do you do that? And how do you do that? And chances are you'll probably do that first with somebody that knows what they're doing, like a fractional, right? The interesting thing I think about a demand-side platform is that you have the opportunity to target very specific audience. Let's say you have 100 people in your database. Well, you can work with a DSP to create thousands of lookalikes, right? And you branch out and you're like, well, I know we want to be in Houston. I know we want to be in Boston. I know we want to be in California. And we can start looking at these lookalike audiences in all these different parts of the country. And then we can actually start targeting using search, contextual search. We can start using display ads. We can start using more programmatic, another thing that's going to come up as you start growing. How do I get into the programmatic game? And ultimately, I think it's a math game. You have a budget. You work with an agency that specializes on this demand side platform. They put together a media buy, and you deploy it. And then it becomes strictly math. What are the what are the inbound, what are the leads coming in? Are you converting them? Are they turning into customers? Was it worth the money? Right? Something to just one of those things I think that, as scrappy restaurant tech companies start to grow, need to start thinking about doing that, not just throwing money out there, but having a good understanding as to, is this working?
Yeah, 100%. So a couple thoughts there. Absolutely, with an agency, you are going to need software around it if you're going to do any real intelligence behind it. You don't want to get wrapped into another software contract. Again, work with an agency. Don't wrap yourself in long term. Put your spend up. Pay your little bit of a fee to work with the agency. See what happens. A/B test it against other platforms, other advertising channels. If you see something there, double down. If it doesn't work, then hey, it's not a channel. Move on.
Right. And isn't that kind of the moral of the story too in marketing? If it's not working, you move on.
You move on.
Yeah. Chad, what do you think, buddy? A lot of stuff.
I think we're at time, and Kevin, thank you, because in this relatively short time, you packed a lot of wisdom. And so, what I'll do real quick is just kind of summarize some of the takeaways, just to remind people, oh yeah, and then they think, oh yeah, I got to do that now. But encourage people to listen to key parts of this back, right, to get more depth on any of this. So, early on, we learned, being scrappy, be prepared to pivot. Don't get too married to something that's not working. Certainly worked for the early days of Checkmate and the elevator story pitch we heard. Start with demand gen. Don't waste time on all the different dimensions of marketing until you have demand gen figured out. Leverage the ecosystem. Find those key integrations. Be prepared to be lab ready. And what that means for the customer on a dime, right? Because that's what's going to help you progress opportunities. Build and leverage case studies. We talked about how powerful those could be. Trade shows, trade pubs, there's a lot of things we talked about, and I think one thing was like this idea of trade-offs, right? Yeah, any of those can be valuable, but it comes at a cost and a trade-off with something else. So, pick your battles and make smart choices and measure things and see what's working. And, enough to get to our special segment, hate to tell you, but
Chad, I just got to interrupt you right now. I absolutely love this. All right. Every week I ask Chad what did we learn today? And Chad, through some miracle, is able to process all of this information and bring it back out to us in this coherent.
Of course. What are we doing here, Paul?
Well,
That's the whole
listening.
point.
You are so good. You are
He
so
was
good at
listening.
this,
Yeah,
man.
Well, now it's getting more recent memory too, right? So that's even helping.
Now
right?
you better, yeah. So what exactly did I say back at minute 52? All right, sorry,
So,
Rain Man.
as a result of all this synthesis, right? We can't stand still, right? As the company's progressing, you are going to need to mature past founder-led sales, which will eventually reach a plateau at a point beyond where most of our listeners might be right now. But just know that it's going to come, and just in every way be prepared to look for the future and where the puck is going, as you shared, Kevin, and especially so as a marketing leader, right? What's working now won't work in another 3-5 million ARR. So, and then we kind of hit this at the very end. Start with fractional in so many areas. Make sure you have that dialed in and working before you scale it with an internal hire. And there's a lot. Gosh, and there's more that I didn't just list there. So I covered a lot.
There's probably a round 2 in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I think we need another combo.
I think we might need to do this again. KJ, bro, you're the best. Thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it.
This was awesome.
Thank
Paul,
you,
what
guys.
would you
Appreciate
encourage
your
our
time.
listeners to do now? Like, give us some action on.
Well, a couple of things. If you want to see, a well-represented restaurant technology brand, go to itsacheckmate.com and see. You can see Kevin's work in action. I know he's got a great team. His team is redonkulous. He's blessed to be working with so many smart and talented people. Listen, do what I did. Look to Kevin as a benchmark, right? Because if you see what he's doing, and if I can see that, then I know I'm on the right path. So I that's my advice to everybody out there.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys. You're all awesome.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Signing off.
Signing off.